Hello people, I'm Ginnymetheral and I am a 4th generation witch. Recently I've received a couple of comments asking about some brownies because I mentioned that I have a family of brownies living in my house, and I thought, well, that's really fun. So this is a very quick video about my household brownies. So what I want to do in this video is just to give you a quick sort of potted history of brownies and where they come from, what they are, what they look like. Then we will look at my brownies and I will tell you their story because it's fascinating and I love them. Brownies are very much part of the UK culture. They're great in Celtic, Gaelic, Scottish, English, Northern English. They've got lots of different names, but basically they are brownies. They were sort of came to the way that we know them in about the 1500s, where it was stylised that brownies were these small, brown, shaggy-haired creatures that helped you around the house. They were considered house fae. They were fairly protective of the house and would help out the house. Classic example of a brownie spirit helping out the house is the story of the elves and the shoemaker. In fact, the elves, I think, are misnamed in that story because of the folklore that goes with brownies. I actually think they should be renamed the Brownies and the Shoemaker. It was known that brownies lived in your house, and it was believed that they wore tattered clothing. And this is where J.K. Rowling gets her ideas from on Harry Potter and, Dobby the house elf. If you managed to present your brownies with any item of clothing, they would apparently be very offended, and they'd dress themselves smartly up in their new clothing and then promptly leave. Think the elves and the shoemaker, when the wife and the shoemaker make those little outfits for the elves in the morning, and they see them put them on and then they leave, never to be seen again. Classic brownie behaviour, in my opinion. Now, brownies are always generally pictured as old, shaggy men. However, they were known to have brownie families. They often lived by the hearth in your household, and people would believe that they loved honey and cream and would leave them gifts of honey and cream by their hearth. Brownies were said to work at night, and that's when they liked to come out. It was at night, when the house was quiet, that brownies performed their menial tasks, helping out the householder. They particularly enjoyed things being tidy, and so would tidy up. I mean, they just sound marvellous, don't they? Now, brownies are very popular, actually, in Germanic folklore, where they have affinities with what they call as kobolds. They are also loved in Scandinavian, where they call the tomter, if I've pronounced that right. I do apologise if I haven't. However, these are slightly different because the fae of another country will always be slightly different from the fae of Britain, because Britain produces its own fae, its own energy, its own types, as much as, there is a type of French person and a type of British person and a type of German person, such as there will be a German style brownie, a British style brownie, a Scandinavian style brownie. So they do have different characteristics depending on where they live. Brownies were considered very, very propitious. They brought prosperity to your house, and it was important to keep them happy because they were easily offended. And the offence that they would take is if A, you gave them clothes, which they, as I have said, they would immediately put on and leave, and B, if you didn't give them the cream and honey and porridge that they particularly loved. They might, if you didn't do this propitiation of the brownies, turn into a bad brownie, otherwise known as a boggart. Now, boggarts were the mean brownies who would go around messing everything up. Brownies generally, though, were considered to be helpful household spirits who would help you out in moments of crisis. There's plenty of story where a lady of a house has gone into labour and the brownie has run off and fetched the midwife for her, which is rather sweet, isn't it? They like helping out. Originally, they were considered the same size, sort of, as humans, and it was only by the 1500s that they'd shrunken down to the miniature size that we see and know today. They have this brown, wrinkled skin like a hazelnut and wonderful lots of shaggy hair. They are generally male and they're generally kind. They love animals and they'll help with the household pets and the farm livestock if allowed to do so. It was considered that brownies particularly loved your household pets and would often sleep with them. And if you had a pony or a horse in your stable, the brownie would often be found grooming the horse, feeding the horse, and caring for the horse. And if you then sold that horse, the brownie in a huff would go with it. They were associated with witchcraft by the Protestants because they considered anything that wasn't straight out of the Bible to be bad. And it was really sort of 1600s where the Protestants added this idea that any household fae were demonic. And this is where quite a lot of household fae and fairies get a bad rap from, because they are not demonic, they are creatures of the earth, as much as you and I are creatures of the earth. Just because you can't necessarily see them doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be here. Now, I've spoken to my brownies and asked them whether it was okay to tell their story, because my brownies are quite new to my household. They only arrived here 18 months, I can't remember. I can't find the exact date in my diary because I think I was so overcome that I failed to write it in. I literally think that that's what the problem was. However, it was about 18 months ago when I noted that there was some extra presence within my house. And so, on investigation, I found that a family of 3 had come and asked to live with us. The mother, the father, and their baby. The baby is fairly new, and it is from them that I have learned all about brownies. They live predominantly in the kitchen area. That's their sort of domain. Turns out their names were Tilda is the mum, Bertram the father, and Molly is the baby. Brownies are known, really, to have the most human-sounding names because they're the ones who live most closely and work most closely and not necessarily known by us with humans. Anyway, so when these brownies first turned up, one of my guardian spirits did turn around to me and said, look, it'd be really nice if you did a sort of welcome ceremony for the brownies into your house. And so that is what we did. I called in all of our household fae and asked them to join us, and then we formally welcomed the Brownie family to join and live with us peacefully. My Brownie family, in return, gave me a gift, and this gift I have to this day. And it is simply a circlet, and it is a circlet of energy magic. And it's just a thank you present. It doesn't do anything, it just shines brightly. I was thrilled to receive this fairy gift of this magic circlet which just sits on my head and shines brightly. It's very pretty. Some people can see it, some people can't. Some people have been jealous of it and tried to take it. I have had somebody do that to me on the street, actually, and that was quite interesting. To have any of you ever seen it? It is literally just a circle of magical energy. Do leave me a comment. Anyway, this is what my family of brownies gave me. And then I have talked to them since and asked them what their history was. So they lived in several counties away. They don't know really which one because they don't pay much attention. It's north of where I am. And Tilda was born in this house to her parents, and she subsequently married Bertram, and they all lived with Bertram, Tilda and the parents. Molly, their daughter, was born several years into the marriage. And then, sadly, Tilda's parents both passed away because brownies can die. They live approximately 2 lifespans of a human, and they age, therefore, at half the rate that a human does. So a 10-year-old brownie, which is what Molly is at the moment, my brownie baby, is only the same as a 5-year-old child. The house that they were living in was an old farmhouse which had fallen into disuse and was therefore slightly derelict. Now, the parents had been born there and they just didn't want to leave. But when they died, it wasn't really suitable for Molly and Bertram and Tilda to remain. You know, there was no reason for them to do so. They'd only been there to help out their parents, who didn't want to move from the house of their youth. They set off then using the ley lines, because that's how Fae travel about this country. I asked them how they knew to come and join me, and they said that they had been speaking with several spirits, Fae and human, and they said, why don't you try going and joining Ginny and her family? So that's when they came here and asked to live with us about 18 months ago. Now what do they do? Well, brownies, as folklore says, are tidier uppers, which is absolutely true. They don't necessarily tidy up your physical house. I haven't discovered that yet. That's not apparently what they do. What they do is tidy up the negative energy that, falls to the floors in your home. For example, if I get up on the wrong side of the bed and come stomping down into the kitchen making cups of tea, I am exuding some negative energy, and that negative energy gets pushed out around into the house. Brownies don't like that. So they clear it all up, take it outside and disperse it back into the world. When negative energy does start clumping together, that's when it can form into sort of a ball of despair, which can hurt people. They go round clearing my house up of any negative energy that I might have, which is marvellous. I love my brownies. They are gentle, kind folk. They would never harm any of us. They would never hurt any of us. That is not in their makeup. I welcome them very much to my household, and I hope that they stay and don't leave. I'm presuming they won't, because, we don't piss them off that much, I hope. Brownies are fairly common. There's a few families of brownies that live in the Devon area where I live. And in fact, there is a pub near me called the Holman Clavel, which is very well known for having a brownie. But when I asked my brownie family about it, they said, no, used to, no longer. Sadly, Brownie died. Because that does happen. What do you think? Do leave me a comment below. I really need to hear your stories about brownies, because I have never met anyone else with brownies who knew that they were there, and so I'm very pleased to announce that I have brownies. In the meantime, do please give me a thumbs up and a subscribe, and I will see you in a few days.